Every week, someone buys a Japanese car, installs a tow hook, throws on some aftermarket wheels, downloads an initial D playlist, and immediately calls themselves JDM Enthusiast. Slow down, because if you call a left-hand drive US spec Honda Civic JDM in front of the wrong car guy, there's a decent chance you'll accidentally start an argument that lasts longer than the entire Fast and Furious franchise. The funny part is that most people don't even know what JDM actually means. They just know Skylines are cool, Supras cost a fortune, and somebody online convinced them that putting Japanese text on a windshield automatically makes the car JDM. So before you start browsing import websites and convincing yourself you need an R34, let's figure out what being a JDM enthusiast actually means. First things first, JDM stands for Japanese Domestic Market. The key word is domestic. It refers to vehicles that were built specifically for sale in Japan. That means a Nissan Skyline GTR delivered to a customer in Tokyo is JDM, while a left-hand drive Nissan 350Z sold new in California is not. It's still a Japanese car, but it wasn't built for the Japanese domestic market. The same goes for countless Hondas, Toyotas, and Mazdas sold around the world. They're Japanese brands, but not necessarily JDM vehicles. Think of it like fast food. A burger from Tokyo and a burger from Los Angeles might come from the same chain, but they're made for different customers. Same logo, different market. Congratulations, you've just avoided your first internet argument. Now that we've covered the basics, let's talk about the completely unofficial progression system of becoming a JDM enthusiast. None of this is mandatory, but if you've spent enough time around the community, you've probably met someone at every stage. Level 1, the awakening. For many enthusiasts, everything begins with a Honda Civic, usually an EG or an EK. It's affordable, reliable, simple to work on, and has an aftermarket so large that you could spend your entire paycheck every month and still have more parts left to buy. Nice. Most owners tell themselves they're only going to make a few tasteful upgrades, but before long they're comparing wheel offsets, debating VTEC online, and convincing friends that buying a 25-year-old hatchback was actually the responsible financial decision. Somewhere along the way, they stop introducing it as a Honda Civic and start introducing it as my project car. You start noticing other Civics on the road. You begin saying things like, it's just a project, while secretly browsing engine swaps at 2 in the morning. Before you know it, you've learned the difference between an EG and an EK at a glance, and you're correcting strangers on the internet for using the term JDM incorrectly. Whether you realize it or not, you've officially started climbing the JDM skill tree. Level 2, rotary delusion. This is where you show up to your local car meet with your freshly built Civic, feeling pretty good about yourself. The wheels are clean, the suspension is dialed in, and you finally think you figured this whole JDM thing out. Then someone starts a Mazda RX-7 nearby. Not drive it, just starts it. You hear that unmistakable rotary brap and immediately think, I want that. From that moment on, your YouTube recommendations are filled with rotary rebuilds, exhaust clips, and videos titled Why the RX-7 Isn't Actually Unreliable. Friends warn you about maintenance, mechanics quietly shake their heads, and RX-7 owners casually mention engine rebuilds like they're talking about changing the oil. None of that matters anymore because you've completely fallen in love with the sound. At this stage, logic no longer applies. Every conversation somehow ends with you saying,
yeah, but you don't understand, it's a rotary.
You don't own one yet, but you've already started defending it online. Level 3, rear-wheel drive addiction. At some point, front-wheel drive no longer feels exciting enough, so your attention shifts toward cars like the Nissan Silvia or 350Z. You start watching drifting videos late into the night and convince yourself that controlling oversteer looks surprisingly manageable. It isn't. Still, you begin talking about weight transfer and limited slip differentials as if you've been competing professionally for years. Tire smoke becomes an acceptable form of self-expression, and suddenly every empty parking lot starts looking suspiciously educational. Level 4, the legendary icons. This is where things become financially questionable. By now, you're deep into JDM culture and you've graduated from affordable project cars to the legends, the R32, R33, and R34 Skyline GTRs, along with the Mark IV Supra. You memorize engine codes like RB26DETT and 2JZ GTE, watch old best motoring clips for fun, and spend hours scrolling through import listings you probably shouldn't be looking at. And let's say life goes well, you actually have the money. Suddenly, these cars stop being posters on your bedroom wall and start becoming realistic options. The problem is that you're no longer buying transportation, you're buying automotive folklore. These machines have been hyped by racing history, movies, video games, and decades of internet debates to the point where they feel less like legends than cultural artifacts. Owning one isn't just about horsepower anymore, it's about finally getting behind the wheel of something you've admired for years. The only downside is that every clean example now comes with a price tag that makes you briefly reconsider your retirement plan. At this level, you've officially gone from car enthusiast to collector of childhood dreams. Level 5, Wide Body Fever. At this point, horsepower is no longer enough. You want presence. You start obsessing over names like Rocket Bunny, Liberty Walk, Veilside, and Pandem. Suddenly, the goal isn't just to own a car, it's to make sure everyone within a 3-block radius notices it. You convince yourself that fender flares held on by exposed bolts are actually high art. Every time you see a perfectly stock car, your first thought is, yeah, but imagine it slammed with a wide body kit. Your social media feed becomes an endless stream of over fenders, impossibly low ride heights, and wheels that cost more than your first project car. Somewhere along the way, you also discover the divisive world of Rauwelt-Begriff, or RWB. Half the internet thinks hand-cutting the fenders of an air-cooled Porsche is automotive sacrilege. The other half thinks it's one of the coolest things ever created. Congratulations, you now have opinions about custom Porsches despite this supposedly being a JDM journey. Level 6, Full Circle, my favorite. You spend years chasing louder exhausts, bigger wings, wider fenders, and more horsepower. Then, one day, something strange happens. You stop asking how much power a car makes and start asking whether it's still stock. A clean Integra Type R with its original paint suddenly feels more special than a 1,000 horsepower build covered in aftermarket parts. A well-preserved Honda NSX earns you respect not because it's loud, but because someone resisted the temptation to ruin what the engineers already perfected. You catch yourself admiring factory wheels, OEM radios, and even original floor mats. And that's probably the biggest surprise about becoming a JDM enthusiast. You start by chasing numbers, turbo noises, and internet hype. You spend years dreaming about the fastest Skyline or the biggest Supra build. But if you stay in the hobby long enough, you eventually come full circle. You realize the coolest cars aren't always the fastest or the most expensive. They're the ones that have been cared for, preserved, and appreciated for what they are. That's when you know you've reached the final level, not because you own the rarest car, but because you've stopped trying to prove anything at all.